What happens when a fairy tale is built on a secret? When the glitter of $1 billion empire is used to hide a single, bloody night? This is the story of a wedding that captivated the world, and a wedding night that shattered it. A story where the search for a perfect image led to an irreversible, horrifying crime. It's a story of Faisal al-Rashid, a man who could buy anything, and Layla Kareem, the woman whose past made her, in his eyes, a purchase he could destroy. Before we unravel this labyrinth of power, deception, and murder, I want to extend a massive welcome to everyone joining us. If you're new to this channel, this is where we dissect the true stories behind the headlines, exploring the dark intersections of wealth, crime, and human nature. If that sounds like your kind of mystery, make sure you're part of our community by subscribing and hitting that bell icon. We dive deep every single week. And right now, as we start this chilling story, I'm genuinely curious. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's incredible to see our global audience connect over these complex narratives. To understand the explosion, you must first understand the powder keg. Faisal al-Rashid was not just wealthy, he was a global brand, a force of nature sculpted from ambition and oil money. His fortune, spun from ruthless acquisitions in tech and infrastructure, was matched only by his obsession with legacy. In a world of old money dynasties who inherited their status, he was the self-made sovereign, a man who had built his throne from scratch and demanded the world kneel before it. His cars weren't just vehicles, they were metallic declarations of war. His homes weren't just residences, they were architectural challenges to history itself. But for all his conquests in the boardroom, there was one trophy he believed would cement his status beyond all doubt, one acquisition that would silence the whispers about his new money origins forever. The perfect wife. She wouldn't just be a partner, she would be the final, flawless piece in the mosaic of his empire. She needed to be breathtakingly beautiful, intelligent enough to navigate his world, and most critically, her history had to be a blank slate, a pristine canvas upon which he could paint his own legacy. His search was not for love, but for an acquisition that would prove his absolute control over every facet of his existence. Enter Layla Kareem. To the world Faisal inhabited, she was a vision, an enigmatic sparkle on the periphery of high society. An emerging presence in exclusive art galleries and high-profile charity events, she carried herself with a grace that seemed innate, a poise that suggested old money and quiet breeding. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her elusive past that Faisal's aides, upon a superficial investigation, deemed suitably private. He saw in her the final ingredient for his perfect public image. He was not just marrying a woman, he was acquiring a living, breathing centerpiece for the grand narrative of his life. But every canvas has its underlying texture, and Layla's was a masterpiece of survival, painted in shades of grit and desperation that Faisal could never have imagined. The Layla Kareem presented to him was a carefully constructed identity, a fortress built to protect a past she was desperately fleeing. Her real story began far from the marble lobbies and private jets. In a world where money was a constant, gnawing worry and safety was a fleeting luxury. She had been a chameleon, a master of adaptation who learned to read a room in seconds, to mirror the accents and manners of the elite, to wear borrowed luxury as if it were her own birthright. There were chapters of her life spent in the dimly lit corners of foreign cities, navigating complex relationships with men who dealt in shadows and transactions. She left behind a trail of old identities, financial loose ends, and a few individuals who remembered the resilient, sharp-edged woman she was before the polish was applied. Her engagement to Faisal was, for her, the ultimate escape hatch. It was a chance to finally lock the door on her past and step into a life of permanent, sanctioned safety. The diamond ring was more than jewelry, it was a shield, and she believed she had earned it. She believed she had covered her tracks. She had distanced herself from old acquaintances, deleted digital footprints, and crafted a believable, sanitized history. But in the age of digital ghosts and relentless gossip, absolute erasure is a fantasy. A single, cached image on an obscure server, a whispered anecdote in the wrong ear, was all it took to bring the entire facade trembling on its foundations. And unbeknownst to her, a rival, a business enemy Faisal had crushed years before without a second thought, had been quietly compiling a dossier, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That moment was the wedding day itself. The wedding was not a celebration, it was a coronation, a live-streamed spectacle of Faisal's power designed to dominate global headlines for a week. Held in the grandest ballroom of his own Dubai hotel, the event was engineered to be unforgettable. The chandeliers were not just crystal, they were waterfalls of hand-cut diamonds, casting a million rainbows across the room. The guest list was a who's who of global influence. From European royalty to Silicon Valley titans, all there to pay homage. Every detail, from the genetically modified, scentless white roses that filled the air with a silent, sterile beauty to the symphony orchestra playing a piece commissioned solely for the night, was designed to scream one word: perfection. Layla, draped in a gown that took 1,000 hours to embroider with pearls and rare threads, played her part flawlessly. She was the serene, radiant bride, her smile a masterpiece of believable joy, her every movement graceful and measured. But beneath the veil and the layers of silk and tulle, her heart was a frantic drum of anxiety. She could feel the weight of countless eyes, the intense scrutiny of a world waiting for a single flaw. And she saw it, the fleeting, confused glance from a man across the room, a face from a life she had tried to bury, a ghost from her past who had somehow slipped through the velvet ropes. She dismissed it as paranoia, a trick of the blinding lights, but the seed of dread was planted, and it began to grow. Faisal, meanwhile, was at his pinnacle. He moved through the crowd, not as a groom, but as a conqueror receiving his tribute. He saw the envy in other men's eyes, the admiration for his beautiful, poised wife. In that moment, he believed he had achieved the impossible. He had purchased perfection. What he didn't know was that as he and his new wife departed the ballroom to a shower of rose petals and cheers, the final piece of his destruction was being delivered. An encrypted file, containing the complete and damning dossier on Layla's true past, arrived in his private server, timed with cruel precision for the moment he would be alone with his new bride. Their destination was the royal suite at the pinnacle of the Burj Al Sara, a tri-level penthouse hovering above the city lights like a castle in the sky. It was a symbol of having arrived at the very top of the world, a fortress of solitude and luxury. The moment the heavy, soundproof doors closed, isolating them from the world, the performance ended. The silence was immediate and heavy, thick with unspoken tension. It was then that Faisal, still buzzing from the adrenaline and champagne of the day, checked his secure tablet. The notification was anonymous, but the contents were explosive, a digital bomb designed to annihilate his reality. The file contained everything: the old names she had used, the financial records from her days of struggle, the photos from underground nightclubs and backroom deals. The sworn testimonies of people from her past he was never supposed to know existed. It was a meticulously compiled record of the life Layla Kareem had tried to erase, a life that directly contradicted the pristine image he had paid millions to construct. The transformation in Faisal was not a slow burn, it was a nuclear detonation. The man who valued control above all else had lost it completely. The perfect image, the crowning achievement of his social ascent, was a lie. In his mind, he wasn't just betrayed by his wife, he was humiliated on a global scale. The wedding, the photos, the headlines, it was all a joke, and he was the punchline. His ego, the very engine of his empire, had been publicly eviscerated. He confronted her, his voice dangerously low. What began as a cold, seething interrogation quickly spiraled into a torrent of uncontrollable rage. He accused her of being a fraud, a con artist, a gold digger, a living stain on his name and his family's honor. Layla, cornered and terrified, her heart pounding against her ribs, switched from stunned denial to desperate pleading, then to a defiant, survivalist anger. She tried to explain her past, the circumstances of her survival, the person she used to be, but her words were just fuel on the all-consuming fire of his fury. The argument became a physical storm, moving through the opulent rooms of the suite, leaving a trail of shattered vases, overturned furniture, and broken trust in its wake. The violence was not a single act, but a terrifying crescendo, the culmination of a lifetime of Faisal getting everything he wanted, meeting an obstacle he could not simply purchase or intimidate. The suite, designed for ultimate luxury and privacy, became a soundproofed chamber of horrors. The city glittered, indifferent and beautiful, below. Neighbors in adjacent penthouses later reported hearing what they thought were intense arguments, followed by the sickening thuds of heavy objects falling. A security guard on patrol in the hallway would later testify that he heard a woman's cry, sharp and sudden, then cut short, and considered alerting his superior, but hesitated, paralyzed by the fear of insulting or angering his all-powerful billionaire employer. That moment of hesitation, bought by the weight of Faisal's reputation, was a death sentence. Inside, the struggle reached its brutal, inevitable climax. In his uncontrollable rage, Faisal crossed a line from which there was no return. When his fury finally subsided, spent and hollow, the silence that followed was more terrifying than the noise. Layla lay lifeless on the cold marble floor, the exquisite, once-in-a-lifetime wedding gown now a tragic shroud, the brilliant promise of a new life utterly extinguished. The perfect image was now a crime scene. The businessman in Faisal surfaced through the shock and the grim reality of what he had done. The predator was gone, replaced by the cold, efficient crisis manager. His first call was not to the police, not to a doctor, but to his head of security. A well-rehearsed protocol for extreme asset protection swung into action. The suite was sealed from the inside. A private, discreet medical team, doctors whose loyalty was secured by exorbitant retainers, was summoned not to save a life, but to document a fictitious one, to certify a death by natural, unforeseeable causes. The real, violent cause was to be hidden, erased from history. Hotel staff were rounded up and offered financial packages so generous they bordered on coercion, each one signed with non-disclosure agreements that threatened financial and personal ruin if broken. The palace's internal security system, which had undoubtedly recorded every second of the escalating tragedy, was wiped clean by a specialist flown in on a private jet under the cover of darkness. The official story, crafted and polished in the desperate early hours of the morning, was one of a tragic medical event, a sudden aneurysm, an unpredictable failure of the body, a twist of fate. To the world, Layla Kareem would be remembered as the beautiful, tragic bride who died too young, a sorrowful end to a modern-day fairy tale. But they missed a witness. A young hotel maid named Elena, tasked with delivering a forgotten late-night amenity, had approached the suite just before the security lockdown was fully in place. She didn't see everything, but she saw enough, the disheveled room through the briefly opened door, Faisal's wild, panicked eyes, and a glimpse of something on the floor that looked terribly, tragically wrong. When her silence was later purchased with a life-changing sum of money, she took it, her family's future secured. But the image haunted her dreams, a ghost that no amount of money could quiet. A conscience, it turns out, is a difficult thing to price, and its weight eventually becomes unbearable. The public announcement of Layla's death sent shockwaves around the globe. The headlines were somber, the social media posts flooded with heart emojis and prayers. For a few days, the carefully crafted narrative of tragic loss held. But then, an anonymous tip, a single, cryptic email to a determined, dogged investigative journalist, asked a simple, devastating question. Why did the hotel's head of security order the immediate, unscheduled incineration of the suite's expensive carpets and drapings at 4 a.m. the morning after the bride died? That question was the single thread that, when pulled, began to unravel the entire tapestry of lies. The journalist, working with clandestine sources inside the hotel, started piecing together the inconsistencies, the paid-off staff, the missing security logs, the sudden wealth of a low-level maid. Elena, tormented by guilt and the relentless questioning of her own conscience, finally broke her silence and went to the authorities. The floodgates opened. Other staff members, now emboldened and fearing they would be implicated in the cover-up, came forward with their own stories of payoffs and whispered threats. The media frenzy that followed was apocalyptic. Faisal al-Rashid was no longer a grieving widower, he was transformed into the world's most famous murder suspect. His empire, built on international confidence and easy credit, began to implode with terrifying speed. Stock prices plummeted, longtime partners severed ties, and his public image was scorched beyond all repair. The very tools he had used to build his kingdom, the media, his immense wealth, his global influence, were now being wielded as weapons to tear it down. The trial was the most watched legal proceeding of the decade, a global spectacle. Faisal's defense team, the very best that money could buy, fought relentlessly, attempting to pick apart the forensic evidence and ruthlessly question the credibility of the hotel staff. For a while, it seemed the formidable fortress of wealth and legal might still hold. But then, the prosecution presented its final, devastating piece of evidence. A renowned data recovery expert had managed to salvage a single, crucial fragment of the deleted security footage. It was only a few seconds long, from a camera pointing at the suite's door from the hallway. But it was enough. It showed Faisal, his face a grotesque mask of pure, uncontrolled rage, moments before entering the suite for the last time. That silent, grainy video was more powerful than any witness testimony. It showed the world the real man lurking beneath the polished billionaire exterior. The verdict was guilty. The man who had literally everything was stripped of his liberty, his assets seized to pay monumental fines and civil settlements. The empire was dismantled. A monument to hubris reduced to legal and financial rubble. But the final, most heartbreaking twist emerged only after the trial, during the meticulous liquidation of his personal estate. Investigators, sifting through a mountain of digital data, found a receipt in Layla's private, encrypted email account. It was for a one-way ticket to Iceland, booked for the morning after her wedding night, under an alias no one knew. In the notes field of the itinerary, she had written a single, poignant line. "A new beginning, just for me." She had seen the monster behind the mask during those final, tense weeks. She had recognized the gilded cage for what it was and had planned her escape before the door had even fully locked behind her. Her ultimate tragedy was that she never got the chance to fly, her new beginning stolen by the very man who had vowed to love and protect her forever. This story is more than a true crime headline. It is a stark and enduring lesson in the corrupting nature of absolute power and the profound fragility of the personas we so carefully construct. It asks us how far we are willing to go for the sake of image, and what we are willing to destroy to protect a lie. Layla's story is a tragic reminder that the past is never truly buried, and that the relentless, obsessive pursuit of a perfect illusion can lead to the most imperfect and horrifying of realities. If this deep dive into the shadows of power and the complexities of the human psyche captivated you, then you cannot miss what we have coming next. We are dedicated to bringing you the world's most compelling untold stories. So, secure your spot in our inner circle, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified the moment we drop our next investigation. Now, the conversation turns to you. This is a complex, layered story with no easy answers. What part of this tragedy resonated with you the most? What hit you the hardest? Was it the chilling, clinical efficiency of the cover-up? The tragic, last-minute discovery of Layla's secret escape plan? Or the pivotal moment Faisal's meticulously maintained public facade finally shattered for the entire world to see? I am genuinely interested to read your perspectives and reflections in the comments below. And once again, it means the world to me to see where our community tunes in from, so let me know which corner of the globe you're watching from today. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant, stay curious, and we will see you in the next video.